Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another and unfortunately our last Hallo-STEAM for this month. This month went by so fast. But I hope you guys are in the mood for pumpkins today because our morning is full of lots of pumpkins. I have a story to read about pumpkins, and then I have a fun experiment that I'm going to show you how to do involving some pumpkins, but they're not maybe the kind of pumpkins you're thinking about. So let's first go ahead and get started with our book. Our book is called The Biggest Pumpkin Ever, and this is written by Stephen Kroll and illustrated by Jenny Bassett. And this book is a little bit of a special book to me because I had a copy of this book when I was a kid, and it was one of my favorite books to read. So I hope you guys enjoy it too. Let's find out about the biggest pumpkin ever. Once there were two mice who fell in love with the same pumpkin. Clayton, the village mouse, noticed it one day in his parents' vegetable garden. It was still little and green, but Clayton thought he could make it grow really big. It might even get big enough to win the grand prize at the town pumpkin contest. Desmond, the field mouse, discovered the pumpkin the same day. He thought that if he helped it grow, it could become the biggest jack-o'-lantern in the neighborhood. That afternoon, Clayton watered the pumpkin. He also mixed up some fertilizer of manure and water. He spread the mixture around the pumpkin to make it grow larger. Desmond didn't want to be seen by Clayton and his family, so he waited until after dark before he crept into the garden. He watered the pumpkin too. He also spread some manure mixed with water around it. The next day, Clayton watered and fertilized the pumpkin again. The next night, Desmond did the same, and the pumpkin began to grow. By the end of a month, the pumpkin was so large, Clayton couldn't believe his eyes. "My goodness," said Clayton's mother, "and it's not even full grown." Clayton shrugged. "All I do is water it," he said. Clayton's mother whispered in his ear. "If you want the pumpkin to grow bigger faster," she said, "you should use sugar water." That night, Desmond brought his brother Morris to see the pumpkin. Morris knew everything there was to know about growing things. "That's some pumpkin," he said. Desmond shrugged. "All I do is water it," he said. Morris whispered in his ear. "You should try using sugar water," he said. The next day, Clayton dug a small hole beside the pumpkin vine. In the hole, he placed a bowl full of sugar water. He cut into the vine a few inches from the pumpkin. In the cut, he put one end of a piece of candle wick. Then he put the other end in a bowl of sugar water. That night, on the other side of the pumpkin, Desmond did exactly the same thing. Within a week, the pumpkin was twice the size it had been. Within 2 weeks, it was absolutely enormous. Clayton was amazed. He ran down the road and peeked into his friend Jimmy's pumpkin patch. The pumpkin Jimmy was growing for the contest looked much smaller. Clayton scratched his head. "I have an amazing pumpkin," he said out loud, "and I think I'm going to win the contest." That night, Desmond and his brother Morris spent a long time looking at the pumpkin. "How do you think it got that big?" Desmond asked. Morris shrugged. "A little luck, a little skill." "It's going to make some jack-o'-lantern," said Desmond. "It sure is," said Morris. A week later, Clayton noticed the pumpkin was bigger than the family car. During the day, everyone he knew came by to admire it. And at night, all the field mice gathered round to do the same. By now, summer was almost over. In a week, the pumpkin would be full grown and start turning yellowish and then orange. A few weeks after that, it would be ripe and ready for the pumpkin contest. Clayton could hardly wait. The pumpkin was growing so fast it would soon be larger than his house. Then he had a terrible thought. If the pumpkin was so big, how would he get it to the contest? It wouldn't fit in his bread wagon. It wouldn't even fit in a truck. Clayton decided to worry about this when the time came. That night, the weather grew colder. Thinking there might be an early frost, Clayton rushed out to the pumpkin with his blanket. One was not enough. Soon he was rushing back and forth, carrying all the blankets from the house. As he worked, he hummed a little song. As he hummed, he heard someone else singing. He also began to realize that someone else was covering the pumpkin with blankets. Desmond, too, had seen the danger of an early frost. He, too, had brought blankets for the pumpkin. As he worked, he sang a little song. As he sang, he began to realize that someone else was working and humming. Clayton stopped humming. He put down his pile of blankets and peered around the corner of the pumpkin. Desmond stopped singing. He put down his blankets and peered around the corner of the pumpkin. The two of them bumped heads and fell down. "You've been feeding the pumpkin," said Clayton. "You've been feeding the pumpkin," said Desmond. "That's why it got so big," said Clayton. "That's why it got so big," said Desmond. They burst out laughing. When everything had been explained, Clayton said, "I know I'll win the contest if I can get the pumpkin to town." Desmond smiled. "I'll help you. Just let me carve the pumpkin into a jack-o'-lantern for Halloween when the contest is over." "It's a deal," said Clayton. "A deal," said Desmond, and they shook on it. The morning of the contest was bright and sunny. Mice were bringing their pumpkins to the town square by truck and car and wagon. Some were rolling them along the ground. Suddenly, they all stopped short. Over the fields came the biggest pumpkin anyone had ever seen. It was being pulled by 100 field mice on motorcycles. When the pumpkin reached town, it was too big for any of the streets. Clayton had to explain why he couldn't bring it to the square. The mayor understood at once. He led the crowd to Clayton's pumpkin and pinned the first prize ribbon on its side. Then everyone danced around it. "Who would have believed this?" said Clayton as he danced. "Who would have believed this?" said Desmond at the same moment. When the celebration was over, the 100 field mice pulled the pumpkin back to the field. The day before Halloween, they carved it into the best jack-o'-lantern ever. And on Halloween night, its wonderful smiling face could be seen glowing for miles around. The end. So the two little mice were working together and they didn't even know it at first. But look what some cooperation did. They made a gigantic pumpkin. How fun. So speaking of pumpkins, I have some pumpkins right here. I have a fun gummy pumpkin. I have a little bit harder marshmallow pumpkin, and I have another candy pumpkin. And these pumpkins are going to be useful for our experiment this week, which is a pumpkin catapult. So how fun does that look? So you definitely want to have your grown-ups supervision and help as you do this experiment. And please, please, please be very careful. And I'll show you why you need to be careful as you do this, because it could be just a little bit dangerous. But as always, this week I have another kit for you guys to come and pick up while supplies last. And in the kit, you're going to find your instruction sheet. So that's how to do this experiment. You're going to find another prediction sheet. If you guys did the cookie experiment, you remember us doing some predictions. This is basically the same thing, but we're going to be making some different predictions this time. So I'll show you that when we get there. And then in your kit, you will find another little bag that has some pumpkins for you. You will find some craft sticks that kind of look like popsicle sticks. You'll have 10 in there. You should find 3 rubber bands. Be very, very careful with these. Do not flick yourself with them. It might hurt a little bit. and you should have one small bottle cap. So I'm going to first show you how to make your catapult, and then we will start flinging some pumpkins. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so first I'm going to start off with my craft sticks. I'm going to take 2 of my craft sticks and set them aside for a minute. I'm going to take 1 rubber band and set that aside with them, so that now I have 2 rubber bands over here, and I should have about 8 craft sticks over here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of these craft sticks and make a pile with them, or stack them right on top of each other. Whoopsie. So I'm just going to stack them up like this, even them up, so that you can see I have a stack of 8 sticks. And all I need to do now is take a rubber band, and this is when you need to be careful because you might accidentally fling the rubber band, and if you hit yourself or somebody else with it, it'll hurt. So carefully wrap the rubber band around one end, and then actually I'm going to have you leave the other end off because this will make the next step a little bit easier. So next, take your 2 sticks, and just like you did with these, you're going to stack one on top of the other, and you're going to take that rubber band and you're going to rubber band the end together. So it's going to take a couple of wraps of that rubber band, but you want it to get pretty tight. Let's see if I do one more. There we go. So now you're going to take your stack of 8 and kind of pull apart 1 stick. And you're going to do the same thing with your 2 sticks here. So there we go. So I've got a V here and I've got a V here. And all I'm going to do is slip my 2 sticks around the 7, whoops, and this is why you have to be careful, around the 7 sticks here, so that you can see I have kind of a V shape with the sticks in the middle. So then I want to gather up my 8 sticks. You might need your grown-ups' help for this because you might need to press a little bit hard to get the sticks all lined back up. I'm going to take the rubber band and rubber band up that end so that now my sticks are stuck in there. So there's the basic catapult. We would want to lay it flat on the table, and then this part bends, so that's what we're going to use to fling our pumpkins. Now if you guys have some heavy-duty glue or some heavy-duty tape at home, that would be really helpful for attaching your bottle cap to the end of your catapult, because that's going to be like a little bucket to hold our pumpkins. There we go. So I'm using tape just because I don't have time to have the glue dry and then be able to show you how this is going to work that quickly. So I've got some like heavy duty packing tape. So this should work. I do recommend though, if you have the time, to use some like hot glue or some super glue to put that on and let that dry. It'll probably stick a little bit better than this will. So if you guys take a look, there's my catapult. And now here are my pumpkins. So like I said, I've got a fun, gummy, squishy pumpkin. This guy's kind of hard. He's called a marshmallow pumpkin. And then I have another little candy pumpkin. So just like with our cookie experiment, the first thing we're going to do is make some predictions. So here's my prediction chart. I have my pumpkin types, my candy pumpkin, which is this guy. Here's my candy pumpkin. I have my marshmallow pumpkin, which is this guy. And then I have my gummy pumpkin, which is this guy. So then I have a column for my predictions. So what we're going to do with our catapults is stick our pumpkins in the bucket, and then when we press down, and this will be easier to do on the table, I really recommend having your catapult on the table when you go to fling for real. When we go to push this down, we're going to fling our pumpkins. So I want to make some guesses as to how far these pumpkins are going to go. So the first thing you want to do, as always, is observe the pumpkins. This one is really, really light and it's really squishy. As you can see, I can really squish it. I don't know if that's going to go very far. I think heavier things will go further. So See if I can get that focus. There is my squishy pumpkin. So let's see, I think that pumpkin's only going to go, let's see, that pumpkin's going to go 2 feet. So I'm going to say it's not going to go very far. And then my next pumpkin is my marshmallow pumpkin. Now this guy is kind of hard. I think he's going to go kind of far. I mean, he's still really lightweight, but he's hard. So I think he's going to go further. I'm going to say he's going to go 3 feet. And then for my gummy pumpkin, so this guy's this is my candy pumpkin. So this guy is a little squishy. He's kind of gummy, but he's also kind of hard too. He's definitely not as squishy as this guy. So I think he's probably somewhere in between. So if I have 2 feet here and 3 feet here, I'm going to guess that in between is 2.5 feet. So those are my guesses. Now I'm going to turn my camera around and we're going to fling some pumpkins and see what happens. Okay, so I am ready to fling my pumpkins. Here is my catapult. I have it flat on the table. And my first pumpkin was my candy pumpkin. That was this guy. Come here, camera. My camera does not want to focus this close up. Oh, I had it. There it is. Here is my candy pumpkin. Like I said, it's a little bit squishy, but it's still kind of hard. So I'm going to fling this one first. And my guess on this pumpkin was that it was going to go 2 feet. So I'm going to put it in the bucket. I'm going to hold the catapult here by the big sticks. And I'm going to take the little stick and bring it down. And then I'm going to let go. So 1, 2, 3. Did you guys see that? My pumpkin went. So I'm going to leave it where it is. It actually hit a little box down there if you heard a thunk. I'm going to leave it where it is so that I can go and measure all of the pumpkins at the same time. So my next pumpkin was this guy, the marshmallow pumpkin. So here he is. He was a hard pumpkin. I'm going to put him in. Same thing. I'm going to hold my catapult, push down my arm, and then 1, 2, 3. Oh, I don't know if you guys could see that. That one went further. Last pumpkin is my silly gummy pumpkin. I said that this guy wasn't going to go very far. I said that he was going to go 2.5 feet. I thought that maybe he would go in between the other 2 pumpkins. So I'm going to set him in the bucket. Do the same thing. Hold on to my catapult, push it down, and ready. 1, 2, 3. All right, let's go measure my pumpkins. Okay, so here's the floor, and I'm hoping you guys can see. I'm going to point them out. Let's see. So right here, here is my candy pumpkin. This little orange dot right here is my gummy pumpkin. And then this even smaller dot out here is my marshmallow pumpkin. So I'm going to come around and I'm going to measure and see how far these pumpkins went. So I'm going to come around and I have a yardstick and I'm going to measure from the edge right here of the table. And my yardstick has a whole lot of inches on it. So I'm going to start, I'm going to put my 1 inch against the edge of the table right here, and then I'm going to put it straight down. And let's see. So that's 48 inches plus another 2 inches. So 48, 49, 50. I'm going to say that pumpkin went 50 inches. I'm going to write it on my board so I don't forget. So if this pumpkin went 50 inches, I'm going to take my stick, start from this pumpkin. So that's 50 plus 48. So that's 98. And I'm going to move my stick again. So 98, 99, 100, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 107 inches for my gummy pumpkin. One last time, I'm going to move my stick, so 107 plus 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. So 107 plus 21 is 128 inches. Alrighty, I am back now with my mostly completed chart. I'm going to say mostly because I think, as I'm recording this right now, I think I've made a mistake in my experiment. So I had my candy pumpkin and my gummy pumpkin, and I think I mixed the two of them up. So I had guessed, so I said candy pumpkin, and I think I guessed for this guy, but I actually flung this guy as my candy pumpkin. And then for the gummy pumpkin, I guessed for, oops, I'm sorry, I guessed that it was this guy, but I actually flung this guy. And actually I can switch this now. So my candy pumpkin, which is this guy, I thought was going to go 2.5 feet. So if I change this to 2.5 feet, and then I'm going to come down here and change this guy to 2 feet. Now I have fixed my mistake, and we can go ahead. So in order to fill out my chart, I actually had to do a little bit of math, because when I made my guesses, I guessed in a unit of measurement called feet, and 1 foot equals 12 inches. I wrote this down here to remind myself. But when I went to measure, I measured in inches. So in order to compare to my prediction, I needed to change my inches into feet. And that was super easy to do. All I need to do was take, for example, this one, 50, and divide by 12 to see how many times 12 fits into 50. And I did do a little bit of estimation here. So for my candy pumpkin, I guessed that it went up, or actually I measured, I'm sorry, that it went 4 feet, which was just about double what I thought it was going to do. So it went further than I thought it was going to go. So my next pumpkin was my marshmallow pumpkin, this guy. My guess was that he was going to go 3 feet. By the time I measured and did my math, he went about 10.5 feet. That's more than 3 times the distance I guessed he was going to go. And then there's this guy, my gummy pumpkin, my really squishy guy here. I had guessed that he was only going to go 2 feet. By the time I did my math, he went about 9 feet. That's more than 4 times the distance I thought he was going to go. So I was way wrong in my guesses for distance. My pumpkins went way further than I thought they would. So I thought that the gummy pumpkin was going to go the shortest, the marshmallow pumpkin was going to go the longest, and the candy pumpkin was going to be somewhere in the middle. So if I look at my answers here, my candy pumpkin went 4 feet, and that was actually the shortest distance. So my candy pumpkin, this guy, actually went the smallest distance. The next one, the gummy pumpkin, which I thought was only going to go a little ways, went 9 feet. So this one was actually the middle pumpkin. He went the middle distance, but was still really far and was still more than twice as far as my candy pumpkin. And then my marshmallow pumpkin went the furthest at 10.5 feet. So I hope you guys had fun and were safe flinging some pumpkins. I hope maybe your predictions were a little bit more accurate than mine were. Apparently, I don't know how far pumpkins go when you fling them off a catapult. So enjoy, guys, be safe, and I hope you really, really enjoyed all of my Hallo-STEAM this month. I really, really enjoyed bringing them to you, and hopefully we'll do this again soon. If you're looking for Storycraft, it will be back on Tuesday, November the 2nd. So enjoy. I'll see you guys all again really, really soon. Bye-bye.